Hi, I'm Amissa, and welcome to my channel, Amissa Loves. Have you ever felt like the universe was sending you a message? If so, sit with me. Let's talk about it. I feel this way all the time, and I love this part of my existence as a highly sensitive and a spiritually connected person. But in the past, I have also relied so much on the interpretation of these kinds of sign from the universe or synchronicity moments that I believed were pointing me in a particular direction. And maybe you have too. You know, those kind of glitch in the matrix moments when something happens that's so uncanny that it almost feels like it's scripted. Maybe you notice that a particular song comes up on shuffle whenever you think of a person, or um, you keep seeing a certain sequence of numbers, or certain animals keep popping up around you in relation to another person. And maybe in those moments, you find yourself, like I often did and still do, jumping straight to the question, what does this mean? Or maybe you're someone who has relied on external signs through divination practices, through things like astrology or tarot. I have also really relied on those tools a lot. I used to need to pull tarot cards and check astrological transits every day. I would seek out reading after reading after reading from various divination practitioners from different traditions. And I felt like I needed all of it to tell me how I was supposed to make meaning of what was happening in my own life. Now, there is nothing wrong with these practices. They are really useful for a lot of us, and I do still consult with these tools on occasion. Divination is really powerful, and it's a really important offering to the collective in so many of our ancestral practices, the very practices that colonialism and enslavement and capitalism have sought to sever from us. But a lot of what I see offered as divination now to the masses feels to me like it's content that's designed to keep us in a state of dependence on the tool or dependence on the oracle or the practitioner. And I've reached a point where I'm no longer dependent in that way on those practices or those tools to know how I should or shouldn't feel, to know what I should or shouldn't choose for myself. Because what if the overconsumption of this kind of spiritual content is yet another way in which capitalism manifests itself? What if it's another way that we employ our collective coping strategy of numbing ourselves through overconsumption that keeps us from actually feeling the truth that our bodies are screaming at us? What if it's another way that we're conditioned to give up our agency, to give up our sovereignty to some authority outside of ourselves? And I wonder if we can practice relying less on the external to tell us how we should feel, and to start practicing leaning more on our own capacity to feel the truth inside of ourselves. Because this immediate jump to needing to interpret and analyze and grasp for meaning for a lot of us, for myself included, it became and can remain a security blanket that actually obscures our own inner vision. There is, I think, a potential danger in spiritual spaces on the internet. There's a danger of us becoming dependent on the tools, the readings, the constant search for signs at the risk of us actually remembering how to feel ourselves. And I think one of the areas of life where this can present the greatest challenge for us is in romantic relationships, because there is a lot of content on spiritual social media about romantic relationships. And much of that content, I think, is designed to get you hooked. It's designed to get you hooked on a particular creator who might be telling you what you want to hear, to get you hooked on the ego boost that they give you by telling you that, of course, your ex still loves you. They get you hooked on the thrill of the drama, of the saga that is, playing out in the collective tarot love reading. And I do think for a lot of practitioners, this content is rooted for them in a real connection that they have to spirit, to source. But our collective reliance on that content can lead us into a state of disorientation from our center, to a place of disconnection from the reality that we are actually experiencing in our own bodies. It can take advantage of your sincere movement towards spiritual growth in ways that then leave you stuck, locked into, fixated on a particular person or a particular story or a particular outcome to a story, rather than that content actually supporting you to move through and to clear deeper and deeper layers of illusion within yourself on your own path towards self-trust. Because the thing is that when you begin to experience a real and an embodied understanding of our oneness, of our material and energetic interconnectedness, of our shared humanity and our shared divinity, when you are open to living in that way and you're looking for the signs of it, you're gonna find signs because that's what you're looking for. It's like the way that you keep seeing that one car, the car that person drives everywhere. It's because you're looking for it. So there it is. And when this happens, when we start to tap in spiritually and to go beyond the veil, we can sometimes get a little tripped up when we start to notice all these signs and synchronicities everywhere. Because we are creator beings. We are co-creating our reality with Source, God, Spirit, the universe, however you name it. So if we want to see a bunch of signs and synchronicities, we can make that happen. We can co-create that. For example, I see angel numbers all the time, every day. And when this first started happening to me, I used to consider every instance of this a big deal. I would try to make note of what I was thinking or doing at that time and analyze it. Or I would run straight to the internet to see what other people were telling me that certain angel numbers mean about what's happening with me. And now, when I see angel numbers throughout my day, every day, I just allow it to be a sign of my own knowing that I'm a person who likes synchronicities. I'm a person who likes angel numbers. I see them because I'm looking for them. I'm co-creating that reality. And the numbers are just confirmation of that. They are just confirmation of my own understanding of how I am attuning to creation, of how I am attuning to the remembrance of our oneness. We can notice the synchronicities as they come. We can recognize them as markers, not of a person being the one necessarily, but maybe as markers of our coming into deeper resonance with our shared oneness. Now, I know that sometimes the synchronicities are so loud, they are so frequent, they are so heightened or charged in a particular connection with someone that it really can feel like the universe is pointing you straight at that person and telling you that they are your person. It can feel like a soul level recognition. And, perhaps in that instance, you are noticing that you are meeting a person that your soul already knows or remembers on some level. And I think that's cool. I think that's great. I think that feels really fun. It can be really delightful to notice that, to notice when it feels like, ooh, it's you. I remember you. And here we are meeting up again to do what we knew we were here to do. I have had that experience in a really intense way. I have met a person who lit up my entire nervous system, my entire reality with nonstop synchronicity. The angel numbers, the really intense dreams, the telepathic connection, the spirit guide communication, all of it was there. And I mistook all of that being there as a sign that this person and I were meant to be together. And when that relationship ended, I experienced, of course, so much heartbreak and grief. And a lot of, honestly, disbelief and confusion because it felt to me like something had gone wrong. Like, how could something that seemed to be so divinely orchestrated just fall apart? But underneath all of that, I honestly felt a lot of shame. Like, how could I have been so wrong? I didn't just question the relationship. I started to question my own capacity to interpret signs. I questioned my own capacity to trust myself. But healing from that relationship and the ending of it, it helped me to understand that it wasn't that I wasn't trusting myself. It's that I was clinging to and putting my trust in all of the external signs when the signs that I really needed to be paying the most attention to were not all of those synchronicities. They were all of the signs that my body was giving me because all of the somatic signs were there. My body was telling me the truth of what I was experiencing in that connection. I felt like I was on a roller coaster with really high highs and really low lows. And my body was riddled with anxiety in that connection. And I was noticing myself falling back into old trauma response patterns of silencing, of freezing, of fawning in reaction to what I was experiencing in that connection. And I chose for a little too long to override those signs because all of the cosmic signs were seemingly telling me that she and I were fated to be together. And now I understand that all of those cosmic signs that I saw and experienced, they weren't really about her. They were about me. They were about the growth that I was being called to step into. They were about the activation of my core wounds that this relationship offered me so that I could, if I chose to, face some deeper truths about myself that I was becoming more and more ready to finally feel. The signs were not really about my love for her or her love for me. They were about the love that I was learning to experience for myself as myself from within. They were about the recognition of myself as a part of the whole of love, of life, of creation. It was the universe catalyzing me to remember my place in oneness and my power to co-create. And that relationship, everything that happened within that container and everything that I healed in the aftermath of that container shattering, all of that was an initiation into a deeper layer of awareness of my own power. All of those signs, they were screaming at me, you have agency, you can choose. Do you actually want this? And when we reach a certain point in our awakening journey, people will arrive to activate us in exactly this way. And these kinds of connections, in them, you're going to notice how much a person reflects parts of you back to yourself in ways that feel really uncanny. But none of that means that you have to attach a particular meaning to those experiences, that you have to try to grasp at tools outside of yourself to tell you how you're supposed to feel about them, or that you have to cling to that person that's offering you that reflection. You can just notice these moments as validation of your own growing conscious awareness. So, as we are being called to be in deeper relationship with ourselves, as we are being called to listen to ourselves in new ways, as we are being called to show up in the world in new ways in order to co-create a new reality, maybe one of the things that we can practice, if this resonates with you, if you're like me, if you're someone who has had this kind of experience, we can practice maybe not paying so much attention to those external signs and synchronicities and beginning to pay more attention to how we feel in our own bodies. We can attune inward rather than looking outward. And it can feel a little confusing at times, honestly, as a highly sensitive being, because sometimes you might think you're attuning to your feelings when what you're actually feeling is how the other person feels about you. What you're actually feeling is all of what they're carrying that they have not felt or accessed yet. Or maybe you're feeling the energy of the moment and the collective or the environment or the context that's around it. You might be feeling so many different layers of feeling that it takes practice to actually return to your own body regularly so that you remember how to feel what feelings are solely yours. You know, the meaning that we often make of these kinds of seemingly fated and divinely orchestrated moments of recognition with someone is, well, it must mean that we're supposed to be in each other's lives forever. And that is one of the lies that I think this false reality tells us. It teaches us that when you meet the right person, then that person will be in your life forever, or in your life in the same way forever. And as we come into resonance with the truth of existence, we start to understand that we are with ourselves forever. And the other beings that we come into contact with along the way, we might recognize them because they are here to play a particular role that we already know on a soul level, that they already know on a soul level. But that soul level knowing, it doesn't have to mean that they are meant to be in our lives in a particular way for the rest of our lives. We can feel that recognition and we can still choose to bracket that and ask ourselves, how do I actually feel in my body when I am with this person? You know, we may be meant to cross paths with them, but it doesn't mean that they're meant to stick around. Sometimes these kinds of soul sibling connections, they show up to offer us the opportunity for practice, for growth, to offer us chances to make a different choice. You know, we might recognize this soul, but do we want to go around with this energy again in a different body? Do we want to repeat an old pattern? Maybe a pattern that we've carried across multiple lifetimes just because it shows up wearing a different face? If our bodies, our attunement to ourselves, our grounded, embodied, felt sense of knowing is telling us that this person is a no, we can trust that. And we can trust that they came around so we could have the experience of choosing not to replay an old pattern, no matter how familiar it might feel. When you notice the signs and synchronicities pointing you toward a person or a job or, you know, whatever, you have choice. You have agency. You don't have to accept that just because the recognition is there, because recognition does not always signal alignment. And as we are collectively deepening our awareness of ourselves as co-creators with Source, God, the universe, all that is, I think it will become maybe less important for us to lean on these external practices and tools and signs outside of our bodies. Those things can be a really important entry point. And then perhaps we maybe reach a new point at which they can be tools that we consult on occasion without feeling like we need to give them our power. Because the truth that is already there in your body, ready for you to feel it, that truth, it will never come to you from anything or anyone external. It's not going to come to you through visible signs and synchronicities. It's not going to come through even the opinions or advice of people who love you. It's not going to come to you through astrology or tarot. Those things can all serve to confirm or to clarify or contextualize what you already know. They can support you as you make choices based on what you know. And for these things, they're all great and useful, but none of those things are how you know. How you know, that comes to you through your body. It comes to you through attuning to yourself and asking, how do I feel? What am I feeling? Where am I feeling it? What does this feeling remind me of? When did I first feel this feeling? What is the feeling asking for from me? All of those kinds of questions. And when we attune and we listen for those answers, when we allow ourselves that process, that is ultimately how we know. And that process can be really intense. But there's no emotion or sensation that can move through you that will take you under, no matter how intense it feels. And the more that you trust yourself to feel your own feelings, the more you will begin to remember yourself as a safe container for anything and everything that comes up in you and moves through you. And through this, your internal knowing process, it becomes even more finely tuned. And honestly, I think this is the miracle itself. The miracle isn't the sign or the synchronicity or the glitch in the matrix that you experience. The miracle is your own capacity to feel the deepest and most authentic truth inside of you, flowing through you, your own vessel. The miracle is that you are a vessel of our oneness. You are a vessel of the truth of love. Those signs and tools, we can allow our relationship to them to be less about decoding messages and more about mirrors for conscious reflection. Mirrors that remind us to turn our gaze back toward ourselves, to come back to our bodies, and to allow our own felt sense of our own embodied truth to be the magic. Because ultimately, truly, you were made to be a signal, a clear signal for your own deepest truth. And when we remember that, we remember that ultimately we are the sign that we were looking for. I hope this message met you well. I love you, and we'll talk soon.